The Vietnam War was a conflict that lasted nearly 2 decades, from 1955 to 1975, leaving scars on nations and individuals alike. It was a war defined by ideologies, fought between communism and capitalism, with Vietnam as its battleground. The roots of the conflict trace back to the end of World War II. After Japan's defeat, Vietnam sought independence from French colonial rule. Ho Chi Minh, a nationalist leader and communist revolutionary, declared Vietnam's independence in 1945. However, the French were unwilling to relinquish control, leading to the First Indochina War. In 1954, the French were defeated at Dien Bien Phu. The Geneva Accords divided Vietnam along the 17th parallel, creating two separate states: Communist North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh, and anti-communist South Vietnam, supported by the United States. The United States, driven by the domino theory, the belief that if one nation fell to communism, others in the region would follow, began providing military aid and advisors to South Vietnam. By the early 1960s, the situation had escalated. The United States, driven by the domino theory, the belief that if one nation fell to communism, others in the region would follow, began providing military aid and advisors to South Vietnam. By the early 1960s, the situation had escalated. The war was brutal and complex. The Viet Cong, a guerrilla force allied with North Vietnam, fought fiercely against U.S. and South Vietnamese forces. Their knowledge of the terrain and use of surprise attacks made them a formidable enemy. For the Vietnamese people, the war brought devastation. Civilians were caught in the crossfire, their homes destroyed in the name of rooting out the Viet Cong. Operations like the infamous My Lai massacre shocked the world and fueled growing anti-war sentiment. Back in the United States, the war was deeply unpopular. Images of wounded soldiers, the use of napalm, and the rising death toll led to protests, particularly among the younger generation. The chant "Make Love Not War" became a rallying cry. Back in the United States, the war was deeply unpopular. Images of wounded soldiers, the use of napalm, and the rising death toll led to protests, particularly among the younger generation. The chant "Make Love Not War" became a rallying cry. In 1969, President Richard Nixon introduced Vietnamization, a policy aimed at reducing American involvement by training South Vietnamese forces to take over. By 1973, the U.S. had signed the Paris Peace Accords and began withdrawing troops. But the war did not end for Vietnam. In 1975, North Vietnamese forces captured Saigon, unifying the country under communist rule. For the United States, it marked a bitter defeat, the first war it had lost. The Vietnam War left an indelible mark. Over 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese lost their lives. Its lessons continue to shape global politics, military strategies, and debates over foreign intervention. Today, Vietnam has moved on, its jungles regrown and cities bustling. But the memories of the war linger, a reminder of the cost of conflict and the resilience of a people determined to rebuild.